Ever since the launch of the game, you guys have been asking me, what's the best DPS in Granblue Fantasy Relink? I couldn't answer that question 2 weeks ago, but 350 hours later, I can. After testing every single character out, there are some clear winners, but damage alone doesn't make a unit good. Having a crowd control, buff, debuff, or another utility is far more important. And for that, this tier list factors in all of those. This is a power tier list, which means it factors in the unit's damage and skills they bring to the party. You could clear the content with whoever you like, so if you're worried about damage, then don't be. Just master your favorite character and you'll clear everything the game has to offer. Some of you do like to play the meta, and that's why you're here. So without further ado, let's get into this tier list, shall we? We'll start off with Gran and Djeeta. They're very easy and intuitive to play, but their damage is lacking compared to the other units. For this shortcoming, they do come with the most skills in the game, 16 to be precise, which makes them very flexible. They can pretty much fill any hole your team might have, whether you need a debuff with Armor Break, Rain of Arrows, or Miserable Mist, a heal with Panacea or Clarity, damage mitigation with Flanks or Substitute. Need to build that stun gauge? Then Overdrive Surge. You name it and they can do it. For this reason, the captain easily gets the A+ rank, as they bring so much to the party. Going down the list, Katalina's next. She does very good damage and brings insane support. Do you need damage reduction? Then Emerald Shield increases your defense while granting Stout Heart, which lets your characters not get interrupted by attacks. There's a sigil that can further reduce damage, and if coordinated properly, this can be insane damage reduction. She can also recover HP with heal, but why do the above when you could just prevent the damage with an AoE invincibility with Light Wall? Crowd control in this game is very powerful, as almost every single enemy gets affected by it, and her Sacred Wind makes the boss a punching bag for the next 6 seconds. Need help building that stun gauge? Then Winter's Reign. If built properly, you could have Infinite Aries, which lets her always have the best version of her skills. Just like the captain, Katalina isn't perfect and has an Achilles heel. If you dodge and Aries is out, then you'll instantly dismiss them. To counteract this, you want to build her with some defense in mind, so she can tank the hits she'll get hit by to maintain Aries. Despite this flaw, Katalina is the first unit to enter the S rank, because when played and built properly, she's the god of war. Rackam is up next. Just like the captain, the skill floor for Rackam is very low, which allows most players to do very good damage just by picking him up. He does have a skill ceiling, which involves you perfectly timing his basic attacks and managing his heat gauge. Rackam does very good damage, and this isn't accounting for the aerial barrage abuse that's been circulating. I did not factor this in his rating, since I do not believe the developers intended for him to play like that, and this is just an oversight on them. Besides his damage, he does bring Spitfire, which lowers the enemy's defense, so you could do more damage if you weren't hitting the damage cap. This can also be looked at as his only weakness, because he doesn't bring much utility outside of this. This isn't a bad thing though, because every game needs a good damage dealer, and Rackam is just that guy, giving him an A+. The mage of the game, Io. She does insane burst damage and fills the Skybound arts very fast, when played optimally. Her skill floor is already high for most first-timers playing a mage in an action RPG game, and the skill ceiling is even higher. The developers were nice enough to allow her to get some great mobility, however, by allowing her to dodge and keep her charge attacks, and this is where most of the skill ceiling comes from. Her fire spell lowers the enemy's defense like Rackam, so your team can do more damage. She helps mitigate damage with Blizzard by lowering the enemy's attack while acting as a disengage to keep herself safe. She also has a heal with Healing Winds, but you never want to use this. Tell your friends to equip a potion hoarder, use their potions, and get good, because you're the DPS in the group and you'll easily carry them. She's the first of 3 to get a stun with Lightning. This is a very powerful crowd control that when used properly, like Katalina's Freeze, will allow you to skip boss phases or break an enemy's overdrive. Io isn't perfect, as her biggest issue is fight knowledge. For example, if a boss jumps at 80% and you're charging Stargaze and Valise at 81%, but your allies push the boss to 80, then you just missed all the damage and it feels terrible. For this reason, Io requires more fight repetition to fully see her power, but true wizards wouldn't mind this as she gets an A+. The sharpshooter of the game, Eugen. Just like EO, he has a very unique playstyle in an action RPG game where you can actually aim your skills. For this, it can be seen as a moderate skill ceiling right away. He does more damage in sniper mode, so it's advised to find an aim setting that feels good for you. Besides that, Eugen has one of the 2 poisons in the game. Damage over time in this game ticks every second and scales off the boss's HP, which only gets better the more HP they have. It also has a defense down tied to this, and it's stronger than EO's or Rackam's. Just like EO, he has a stun with Paralyzing Bullet, and when used strategically, it's very powerful. He can also heal like Ana from Overwatch with Healing Bullet. Outside of this utility, he does very good damage just like Rackam, and it's his utility that separates them, giving him the S rank. Another unique character is Rosetta. She places plants and they attack enemies like Torbjorn from Overwatch. If that wasn't cool, she could infinitely keep up an attack, defense, and regen buff on your entire party. Pair that with Rose Barrier and your team's taking a lot less damage as long as your teammates are in the plant's radius. She can also heal allies with Bouquet while getting 3 plants. Rosetta is the second unit that gets a poison and it works just like Eugen's. The rest of her kit doesn't have much utility and it's focused on her damage. For this reason, she'll be our first unit to go into the A tier. Charlotta's up next. She's the first unit that enjoys spamming her basic attack, so warning to anyone who has a bad arm. You can't just ramp up her attack speed, then slowly press the button to maintain the attack speed, as it drastically drops to the starting speed. Outside of this con, she is very easy and fun to play. She can give herself invincibility, so she could stand in the bad AoEs and keep damaging the enemy. When that's on cooldown, she could do her unique attack to grant herself more invincibility. This does get her out of Noble Stance, which grants her the attack speed and damage increase to her basic attacks. To get back into Noble Stance quickly, she could use Sword of Lumiel or Shining Onslaught. Shining Onslaught also lowers the enemy's defense, so your team can do more damage. Charlotta also helps mitigate damage for the party with Cunning Shed, but the radius is small, so they need to stand close next to her. Charlotta is one of the few units that has multiple ways to prevent damage and can clear most fights unscathed. Our little princess gets an A rank for her valiant efforts. One Punch Man Ghandagoza. He has a very simple gameplay loop of building up his infernal rage and then punching the enemy in the face. His skill ceiling starts when you can't hit a boss because in 10 seconds, he loses all resources you built up, unlike most characters who can keep theirs. While I was learning him, I popped the buff and then I dodge cancelled it to stop the timer from decaying. This essentially makes him a 3-skill hero in a heavy downtime fight, but if you can master this, he does very good damage. He brings a slow to the party with Infernal Stomp, and he can also buff the team's damage with True Avidya. He has one of the slowest movement speeds, so it can have some growing pains. Besides this, he's a very good unit, especially in Link time, where he could pump out back-to-back 2 million punches. Ghandagoza easily makes it into the A rank. The Beast Tamer is up next, Ferry. She summons pets to fight by her side. Her skill ceiling is pretty low, as anyone can pick her up and do good damage. She helps the stun gauge fill with Purge Spirits. She can also slow the enemies with Sikkim Gigi. Just like Rosetta, Ferry can grant an attack, defense, and regen buff with Benediction, making her a great support. Up to this point, none of the other units had an innate supplementary damage buff in their skills. Ferry is the first and is very powerful. This allows her to deal additional damage for free, which helps build the Skybound arts very quickly. She's the second offender of the aerial barrage nonsense I've been seeing. I want to point out I excluded this from her rating, and she still does great damage without abusing this, which gives her an A+ rating. Katana enjoys Rejoice as Narmaya's up next. She has a decent skill floor as she's the first unit to have 2 stances. You have to swap between both of them to do optimal damage while building up her butterflies. This enhances her skills by either doing more damage or having a more potent effect like Apex of Nothingness is Slow. Narmaya is a powerful DPS that does a lot of damage, and with her Dance of Pink Petals active during Link time, it can be extended for a very long time. She's a powerhouse when played optimally, giving her an A+ rank. The most underrated unit of the game, Lancelot. While his skill floor is very low, he does do very good damage and has a very similar playstyle to Charlotta. So if you have a bad arm, I'd stay away from him. What separates him from Charlotta is the fact that he comes with a freeze, which I've mentioned is very strong when used properly to skip overdrives or phase transitions. He's also another supplementary damage user, so by default he's just better. His one flaw is that his attack range seems to be smaller than other units, so weird hitboxes can cause him to whiff, and you'll want to use his unique attack to stick on your foe. If you want more damage, then Blade Impulse is one of the shortest gap closer cooldowns in the game. Lancelot should not be slept on as he's easily S tier material. Axe lovers rejoice as Vane is here. He has a moderate skill floor, as his unique gimmick is the beatdown gauge. By doing combo finishers, you will fill this up. When filled up, you can then use this to do damage to your foes, and with precise timing, you can block any incoming attack while keeping up the onslaught. Outside of this, his real weakness comes with how long his combos can be, and he has the same issues that Io does. Vane users need more fight knowledge so they don't whiff on their big hits of their combos, as they will have to fill up their gauge all over again to use it. Outside of this, he has a strong damage mitigation with Rampart. It's a bubble that grants invincibility while he stands still. Allies can freely go in and out to refresh this buff to damage the boss when they normally wouldn't because they would be either dodging or guarding. If you're not good at a certain boss's bloodthirst, then cheese it with the skill. It does have a very long cooldown, so use it wisely. He has a very high stun attack with Armor Destruction, so use this to get that link attack easier. And he's the only unit in the game that scales with his Skybound arts. Energy Destruction does massive damage as long as he has 30% or more, which isn't that hard to achieve. Vane easily makes it into the A+ rank. The hottie of the game, Percival. This Chad does ridiculous damage and has a very low skill floor. Almost anyone can pick him up and instantly do insane damage right away. He's the first Unga Bunga character in the game, as there's not much thought to it. Press a skill, charge your unique attack, and repeat. It's that simple. He's the first unit to get a burn, which functions the same as poison. These two stack, which makes for some hilarious HP drains. He naturally comes with supplementary damage, so you know he's gonna be good. Someone clearly has a favorite in the office, and clearly it was Percival, because with just Router, he can extend the link time window like crazy. And he was the first unit I saw the link time limit. Did you know it kicks you out if you stay inside it too long? When one would think that is it, he can also buff the party's attack and defense, or slow the enemy while reducing their defense. This stacks with other defense down since it has a unique icon. Percival clearly was Cygame's favorite child, as he easily gets an S rank. Where else do you think he would go with such an insane kit? Edgelords rejoice as Siegfried is here. His skill floor starts off with his perfectly timed attack playstyle. Just like Ghandagoza, you'll want to master this for optimal damage, and I highly recommend you turn on vibrations to learn the rhythm. This helps when bosses cover your character and you can't properly see the animation to know the timing. He builds the Skybound arts really fast and he has insane utility. He brings 70% defense buff with just Mirage. With so much defense, you'll start taking chip damage. So Salvator will help as you can now heal the damage with the drain it provides, acting as a pseudo healer while preventing all debuffs. He can lower the enemy's defense so your team does more damage. He has infinite gap closers with his unique attack. He has no flaws, especially if you use the vibration trick to perfect his timing, giving him the S rank. My favorite anime trope is up next, Cagliostro. She's a caster DPS with a very low skill ceiling, unlike Io. Her skill ceiling comes into play when you need to know the best combo to use in each situation. Each combo finisher she does lets her charge her collapse really fast, and she can move with it the whole time. Unlike Io, if she dodges, she loses it. But this really isn't a downside, as I rarely had this situation pop up. Besides the captain, she's the only unit with a revive, so she's great when learning new fights or carrying noobs in online play. She has a heal with reinforcement, and you should carry it because it pairs well with Phantasmagoria. Cagliostro is the only unit in the game to buff your critical hit rate. One would think that's enough for a buff, but she also buffs your defense and attack in one button press. And it's global, so everyone will get this buff no matter where they're at on the battlefield. It has a unique icon, which means this will stack with other attack and defense buffs. You'd think I'd stop here, but I'm not done. She can also lower the enemy's attack with Mehen, or remove one buff from the enemy with Disruption. Cagliostro just does too much to be anything but S rank. Yodarha wants nothing to do but fish, so let's make this quick for him, shall we? He's similar to Charlotta in the sense that he could clear most fights unscathed. He has a very long combo string, but every time he does a combo finisher, this chain gets reduced by 1 attack until it's just attack and his unique attack, which gives him invincibility. While working your way up to shorten his combo, you can use Flashing Void, which grants him invincibility frames for the whole attack. Every time he uses a skill, he could then use a combo finisher right after, so it's not realistic to often have him as his optimal combo really fast. His skill ceiling revolves around you keeping track of his shrouds at all times, because one usage of it suboptimally can ruin the flow. While he does have a ton of damage, he has the best defense buff in the game with Hymn of the Hundreds. This grants the entire party Mirror Image, which allows them to avoid damage 100% for 3 instants of damage. This can be extended if the incoming attack is guarded, so tell your friends to get good. This obviously has one flaw in a fight that has multiple instances of small damage, but overall it's insanely strong when used properly. He won't be sleeping with the fishes tonight as he enters the S tier. Dragoon lovers rejoice as Zeta's here. If you enjoy rhythm games, then you might like her, as her unique gimmick is landing loop combos on an enemy in the ear, which requires perfect timing and it changes per enemy you fight and her hitbox. This already puts her skill ceiling very high. If you like this gameplay, then you'll love her as she avoids most damage in fights, as she's above the battlefield for the most part, kicking enemies in the face. She does very good damage and has supplementary damage in her kit, so you know she's packing. She's the last unit in the game that has a stun, which already mentioned is very strong when coordinated. She helps reduce enemies' attack with Rain of Fury, and can even increase the party's attack with Signo Drive. Just like Percival, she has a burn. Zeta is a fantastic unit and she gets an A+ rating. Scythe enjoyers rejoice as Vaseraga's here. If you play Monster Hunter, then this is the Great Sword equivalent. He does big damage by charging up his scythe and slashing his foes. He grants himself Stout Heart, an attack and defense buff by filling up his own gauge. Just like Ghandagoza, he has a very slow movement speed, which can be alleviated with Battalions of Fear. He could slow the enemy with Umbral Eclipse, and take the team damage with Nether Wrath by standing still and channeling it. But why would you do any of this when you could kill the boss in seconds? He has one of the highest DPS, but outside of that, he doesn't bring anything else the other units above him do, giving him the A rank. Last but not least, Id. He has a very high skill ceiling as you need to manage his 3 forms. His dragon form has locked-in skills that can't be changed, so if you don't plan properly, then you miss out on his only mitigation with Atonement. I wouldn't even use this though, as the rest of his kit screams damage. For all the hard work you put into doing an optimal rotation, you could put in less effort on another character and still outdamage this guy. Id unfortunately is the only unit to get the B rank. Hopefully now you know which is the most powerful unit in Granblue Fantasy Relink. And if you have any unanswered questions, then ask down below. And if you want to know which is the best AI teammate, then check this video right here. Until the next video, I'll see ya.